Welcome to today's historical deep dive, where we pull back the curtain on the moments that shaped the world and the minds behind them. Today, we're not just studying history. We're stepping into the heart of a man who didn't ask for permission, he demanded destiny. This is the story of Napoleon Bonaparte, a name synonymous with ambition, empire, and a fall that still echoes through the ages. But what drove him? What happens when sheer will challenges the very fabric of power? If you love immersive, real storytelling about ambition and downfall, hit like and subscribe. It helps us more than you know. Drop a comment with your favorite Napoleon quote or the moment that shocked you most. Let's begin and change the way you think about history. You stand in Paris, December 2nd, 1804. The air bites with anticipation and the acrid scent of ceremonial gunpowder. Notre Dame looms, an ancient stone heart, now thrumming with a manufactured destiny. Inside, the grandeur is overwhelming, a theater of power constructed stroke by stroke. The symbols are heavy. The Pope, Pius VII, a reluctant guest brought from Rome, a living prop for legitimacy. Marshals clad in velvet and gold, their loyalty forged in fire. The Imperial Guard, silent and formidable, the steel beneath the silk. You feel the weight of the moment, not just the physical weight of the Iron Crown of Lombardy and the laurel wreath waiting on the altar, but the metaphorical gravity of what brought Napoleon here. This isn't inherited power, blessed by centuries of tradition or divine right. It's claimed power, wrestled from the chaos of revolution, built on blood spilled at Lodi and Austerlitz, on administrative brilliance, and on an audacious, almost pathological self-belief. He turns his back on the Pope, takes the crown, and places it upon his own head, an act of defiance louder than any cannonade. This single event, the self-coronation, marks the apex of one man's ascent and sets the stage for a world-altering drama. It is the moment ambition stops asking and starts taking, irrevocably changing the rules of the game for rulers and revolutionaries alike. This scene embodies the ultimate culmination of relentless drive. You witness the sheer will of one man bending history, tradition, and even the church to his purpose. The insight here is stark, almost chilling. Absolute ambition, when unchecked, recognizes no higher authority than itself, not even God or millennium-old institutions. The reflection is perhaps uncomfortably relevant. What lines would you cross? What sacred norms would you defy to seize the ultimate prize? The air in Notre Dame, thick with incense and unbridled aspiration, seems to pulse with this question, echoing not just through history, but potentially through the chambers of your own aspirations. The crown sits heavy, not just on his head, but on the fate of millions. Welcome to today's historical deep dive into a force of nature who reshaped Europe. What if I told you the man who crowned himself emperor, who marched armies across frozen plains and sunny Alps, was once just a small, awkward boy, bullied for his accent? It sounds like fiction, the kind of dramatic arc reserved for novels, but it's the raw, improbable truth. Napoleon Bonaparte wasn't born on a throne. He forged his path through sheer will, cunning, and an ambition that burned hotter than any cannon. If you love immersive, real storytelling about ambition and downfall, hit like and subscribe. It helps us more than you know. We're peeling back the layers of history to understand the why behind the legend, the human pulse beneath the marble statue. Drop a comment with your favorite Napoleon quote or the moment that shocked you most? Was it a strategic masterpiece, a moment of surprising empathy, or perhaps a chilling act of ruthlessness? This isn't just about dates and battles. It's about the architecture of power, the psychology of a leader, and the enduring, often uncomfortable truths about human nature. Let's begin and change the way you think about history. You are born into a world in flux, a rugged island called Corsica, fiercely proud and newly under French rule. You are Napoleon Bonaparte, son of a minor noble family, navigating the tricky politics of surrender and adaptation. Your father, Carlo, is pragmatic, securing opportunities for his brood by embracing the new regime, a move many on the island resent. Young Napoleone grows up bilingual, speaking both the rapid, melodic Corsican dialect and the more formal French tongue he'll later master, though the accent lingers, a mark of the outsider. Corsica is a land of vendettas, of fierce independence, and a deep-seated suspicion of outsiders, lessons absorbed implicitly. You learn loyalty, but also the value of looking out for your own. When the opportunity arises, a scholarship to a French military academy, it's a path out, a chance at status in the very nation that conquered your homeland. It's a complex departure, leaving behind the familiar shores for the heart of the empire you'll one day dominate. The seed of ambition is planted in the fertile ground of displacement and perceived grievance. You board the ship, a boy of 9, heading towards a destiny you cannot yet comprehend, towards a future where your Corsican identity will be both a source of ridicule and a hidden strength. The journey north is more than just miles across the sea. It is a passage into the crucible that will forge the man who challenges the world. You are now just one among hundreds at the Royal Military School in Brienne-le-Château. It's cold, the discipline is harsh, and the disconnect is immediate. You arrive, a thin, intense boy from a barbaric island, speaking French with a thick, heavily rolled R and flattened vowels that make you an instant target. They call you la pile au nez, the straw in the nose, or simply the Corsican. Isolation isn't a choice. It's your daily reality. The sons of the French aristocracy and mainland bourgeoisie mock your accent, your provincial manners, your family's tenuous nobility. You are an outsider, acutely aware of the invisible walls they erect around you. While others engage in the rough-and-tumble games and the muddy courtyards, you retreat. Your companions are made of paper and ink. The library becomes your sanctuary. You don't just read, you devour. History, geography, philosophy, mathematics. You gorge yourself on knowledge. Plutarch's Lives of the Noble Greeks and Romans teaches you the potential and pitfalls of great men. You analyze Hannibal, Alexander, Caesar, dissecting their campaigns, their decisions, their failures. You read Rousseau, understanding the complexities of human nature and society, even as you recoil from the casual cruelties of your peers. But your deepest passion, the one that ignites a fire in your calculating mind, is artillery. You bury yourself in the manuals, the complex geometric calculations of trajectory, ballistics, fortification. This is a science, a puzzle, a way to control chaos. It's empirical, logical, a world where merit isn't measured by birthright, but by precision and understanding. You walk the grounds alone, not idly, but observing, calculating angles, distances. Every wall, every slope is a potential tactical problem to solve. This isn't merely studiousness. It's a conscious, almost desperate act of self-preservation and cultivation. You are forging an unyielding inner core. The marginalization that might crush another boy instead hardens you, focusing your formidable intellect and simmering resentment into a potent, singular drive. You won't beat them at their games of social grace. You will surpass them in the arenas that truly matter: knowledge, discipline, and the cold, hard logic of war. The school bullies are not just boys. They are the first embodiment of the world you feel misunderstands and dismisses you. You will prove that world wrong. The insight gleaned from this lonely storm is profound. Perceived inadequacy, the sting of being an outsider, can be the most potent fuel for ambition. The fire of greatness is often kindled not in comfort, but in the crucible of hardship, in a burning desire for recognition from a world that initially scorned you. You learn self-reliance because you have no other choice. Your identity isn't given. It is forged in solitary defiance, shaped by the books you read and the calculations you perform in your mind. Ask yourself, is this resilience born of inner strength or a deep wound that can never fully heal, pushing you relentlessly towards external validation? This lonely boy, burying himself in maps and equations, is laying the foundation for the strategist who will one day redraw the map of Europe. A testament to the power found in proving everyone wrong. The quiet observation skills honed on these lonely grounds will become the strategic vision that blinds emperors. Brienne is not just a school. It is where the future emperor learns the bitter taste of isolation and how to weaponize it. The air hangs thick with the stench of gunpowder and desperation. It is 1793, and the city of Toulon, France's great Mediterranean naval base, is in the hands of royalists and their foreign allies, the British fleet dominating the harbor like a snarling beast. The forces of the revolution, ill-equipped and poorly led, flounder on the hillsides, months into a fruitless siege. You are here, among the frayed nerves and revolutionary fervor, a young, accomplished teammate on the battlefield of Britain in 1793. Provincial artillery captain, barely out of school, overlooked, dismissed by the older, less imaginative officers. Your name is Napoleon Bonaparte. While others debate frontal assaults and traditional siege lines, your eyes, sharp and assessing, scan the terrain. You don't see walls to breach. You see geometry, angles, consequence. There, on the southwestern edge of the harbor, are the promontories of Leguiat and Balaguer. They are the strategic keys, the Achilles heel. Control those heights, place your batteries there, and you can rain fire onto the British ships, making the harbor untenable. It is a simple, elegant, brutal truth, but making others see it is another war entirely. You argue, you cajole, you write impassioned memos. You confront bewildered bureaucratic generals who scoff at the tactical theories of a 24-year-old Corsican with a funny accent. You bypass the chain of command, sometimes fabricating orders or seizing resources just to position a few cannons where you know they must be. It is a dangerous game. Failure here isn't just defeat. It's the guillotine in the heart of the revolution's paranoia. Yet, your conviction is a force of nature, a quiet storm against the prevailing incompetence. With uncanny precision, you direct the placement of batteries, naming one famously the Battery of Men Without Fear. The cannonballs begin to fly, not at the city walls, but arcing towards the harbor. Day after day, the relentless bombardment from the newly seized heights takes its toll. The British Admiral, Lord Hood, quickly understands the grave danger. His fleet is exposed, vulnerable. The game is up. He orders the withdrawal. Toulon is retaken, a critical victory for the revolution. This is your first true proving ground, Captain. This messy, chaotic, dangerous siege is where your theoretical genius translates into tangible results. It wasn't a grand command, just artillery, but it was your artillery, placed exactly where you knew it needed to be. You saw the strategic point when no one else did, and you fought tooth and nail through apathy and obstruction to make your vision reality. It is a powerful, chilling display of how singular focus, backed by genuine competence, can cut through revolutionary chaos like a blade. It earns you a promotion to Brigadier General almost immediately. Ask yourself, when you see the hidden solution others miss, do you have the courage and the sheer stubbornness to fight not just the problem, but the inertia of the world around you to solve it? Toulon says the answer defines destiny. Paris, 1795. The revolution is exhausted, a spent storm leaving behind a fragile calm. The Directory, the government clutching power, is weak, unpopular, swaying like a mast in troubled seas. Royalist insurgents, seeing their chance, are gathering force, massing in the streets of the capital, dreaming of restoring the old world. Tens of thousands, a tide of rebellion, threatening to sweep away the fragile republic. The Directory is desperate. They need a man who will not flinch, a mind as sharp and cold as steel, someone to defend their fragile hold on power, whatever the cost. Paul Barras, one of the directors, a man who knows the dark arts of survival, remembers a young general, brilliant but recently sidelined, notorious for his ruthlessness in Toulon. He calls upon Bonaparte. You are Barras for a moment, staring at this thin, intense Corsican. You see not just a military man, but a force of nature waiting for direction. And he sees you, an opportunity. The rebels are marching on the Tuileries, where the Directory sits exposed. Conventional wisdom? Fight street to street. Try to disperse them with infantry. Napoleon's mind works differently, strategically, brutally. He knows this isn't just a riot. It's a political war for the soul of France, and such wars are not won by hesitation. His eyes scan the map of Paris, not for defensive positions, but for killing zones. He orders immediate action, sees the artillery parked outside the city. Under the cloak of night, his officers commandeer dozens of cannons and drag them through the streets, a silent, heavy procession of iron teeth. As dawn breaks on the 13th Vendémiaire, Year 4, October 5th, 1795, the air is thick with tension. The Royalist columns, a formidable force of perhaps 25,000, converge on the Tuileries. They expect resistance, perhaps musket fire, a skirmish. They are met instead by the cold, silent mouths of cannons positioned expertly by Napoleon on crucial intersections and facing directly down the narrow streets where the crowds are densest. The orders are given, not solid shot to breach walls, but grapeshot, canisters packed with hundreds of iron balls, designed to sigh through human flesh like a grim harvest. The command rings out. The cannons roar. It's not a battle, it's an execution. Grapeshot rips through the massed ranks of the insurgents. The sound is deafening, the effect horrifyingly efficient. Bodies fall in heaps. The streets run red. Panic erupts. The whiff of grapeshot, as Napoleon himself would later famously, chillingly call it, disperses the mob not with negotiation or maneuver, but with sheer, unadulterated force. The rebellion is crushed in a few bloody hours. This moment isn't just a historical footnote about a street fight. It is a political baptism of fire for Napoleon Bonaparte. He proved, unequivocally, that he possessed the chilling pragmatism required to wield absolute power. He wouldn't flinch from using the most terrible force imaginable against his own countrymen to maintain order, to protect the established, albeit fragile, government, and crucially, to elevate his own position within it. He showed the Directory, and indeed all of France, that he was a man capable of decisive, brutal action when others wavered. It was a move less about loyalty to the Directory and more about calculating the fastest route up the ladder of power. By saving the government, he made himself indispensable to it, proving that while others might deliberate on ethics, he would act with ruthless efficiency. The cause and effect are stark. Weakness invites challenge. Challenge requires force. The willingness to apply overwhelming force secures power and eliminates opposition. Consider this. Faced with chaos, Napoleon chose not reconciliation, not prolonged struggle, but swift, overwhelming, lethal force. What would you have done? Standing in his boots, tasked with saving a city and a government from violent overthrow. What are the ethical boundaries you would defend, and what would you sacrifice? Perhaps the lives of those you deem rebels, perhaps a piece of your own soul, for the sake of stability or self-preservation. This brutal efficiency, this cold calculation of cost in human lives versus political outcome, is a core insight into the man who would soon dominate a continent. The blood spilled on the 13th Vendémiaire was the crimson ink that wrote his name larger on the page of French history. You ride into the cold, damp camps of the Army of Italy in 1796. These are not the Grande Armée you might imagine. They are ragged, hungry specters, neglected by Paris, their morale as low as the winter sky. They shuffle, they complain, they yearn for home. Then he arrives, a young man, barely older than some of the junior officers, with eyes like chips of ice and an authority that belies his slight frame. He doesn't stand on ceremony. He doesn't command from a distant chateau. You see him walking among them, sharing their meager rations, enduring the same biting winds. He learns their names, listens to their grievances, speaks to them not as a distant god, but as a fellow soldier, facing the same impossible odds. This isn't just charming, it's strategic genius. He's not just planning maneuvers on a map. He is forging an unbreakable bond with the men who will march into hell for him. The transformation is swift, almost miraculous. These dispirited troops are ignited by his presence, by his audacious plans. They are no longer fighting for an abstract republic, but for him, for the glory he promises, for the respect he shows them. He unleashes them like a storm, moving with unheard-of speed, striking where the enemy expects him least. Lodi, where he seizes the bridge under murderous fire, exposing himself to danger and earning the soldiers' awe. Arcole, where he grabs a flag and charges into the fray himself, leading by example through the swamps. Rivoli, a dizzying ballet of speed and precise timing, defeating multiple converging Austrian armies through sheer audacity and relentless movement. These aren't just victories. They are foundational myths being born. The way he wins, the speed, the deception, the shared danger, becomes the stuff of legend, passed soldier to soldier around campfires. He understands something profound. Loyalty isn't just bought with success. It's forged in the crucible of shared struggle and personal courage. He shares the risks, builds trust through his constant presence at the front. This campaign showcases the raw power of charismatic leadership fused with relentless innovation. True leadership, he demonstrates, isn't solely about brilliant strategy executed from a safe distance. It's about inspiring belief in the impossible and proving you are willing to share the very real danger. Ask yourself, watching him wade through the Arcole swamps alongside his grenadiers, was this calculated theatrics or the authentic expression of a leader who knew he had to embody the risk to earn the ultimate loyalty? What would you have done, standing in his boots, facing down established empires with a ragtag army? Would you lead from the front, sharing the dirt and the bullets, building trust through presence, or from a distant command post, relying solely on plans on paper? The legend of Italy is not just about conquering territory, it's about conquering the hearts of men by showing them the extraordinary courage required to make the impossible real. You sail with the grand fleet towards the horizon, bound for Egypt in 1798. The Mediterranean shimmers under the sun, masking the immense gamble unfolding. This isn't merely conquest. It's a daring lunge at the jugular of the British Empire, aiming to sever their vital trade routes to India. The air is thick with ambition, the promise of Eastern glory intoxicating. You feel the swell of the waves, the hope of a new era dawning in the land of pharaohs. Landing is a triumph. The initial marches across the desert surprisingly swift. The Battle of the Pyramids isn't just a victory. It's a propaganda masterpiece, a collision of modern strategy with ancient wonders, burnishing your legend further. Soldiers, you proclaim, from the height of these pyramids, 40 centuries look down upon you. But the desert mirage quickly dissipates. While you consolidate power on land, disaster strikes the fleet at Abu Qir Bay. Nelson's crushing victory at the Battle of the Nile is a thunderbolt from a clear sky. Suddenly, you are not a conqueror expanding an empire, but a general stranded, your lifeline to France severed. The strategic failure is absolute, immediate, and crippling. The grand vision collapses inward, leaving only survival. You push into Syria, not out of strategic necessity, but a desperate attempt to salvage something, anything, from the wreckage. The campaign is brutal, searing heat, stubborn defenses at Acre, and the creeping horror of the plague, decimating your ranks and morale. The vision of a triumphant return to France fades with every sick man left behind. It's here, in the harsh realities of a failed campaign and a stranded army, that a stark truth emerges. The architect of empires, the leader who inspired millions, is also a man acutely aware of shifting political winds back home. Reports from France speak of instability, of a potential power vacuum. The same drive that pushed you to conquer now points towards self-preservation. Your army, loyal and suffering, becomes a secondary concern. Slipping away, abandoning the men who followed you into the desert, becomes a cold calculation for personal survival, a desperate maneuver on the political chessboard of Paris. It's a strategic failure on a grand scale, concluded by a profoundly personal act of abandonment. This reveals a chilling insight. Even visionary leadership can contain a self-serving core, capable of leaving others to their fate when personal interests demand it. Consider this. When faced with insurmountable failure, do you go down with the ship, or do you find the lifeboat? What does that choice, that instinct for self-preservation at the expense of others, truly reveal about leadership? Paris, November 9th, 1799. The air in the Council of 500 is thick with suspicion and fear, not the revolutionary fervor of a decade past, but a sour, anxious energy. You are ushered into the hall, a vast, echoing space where the Republic's fate is being debated, or perhaps dismantled. Expectations weigh heavy. Reports suggest a smooth transfer of power, engineered by politicians weary of the Directory's chaos. Yet, the moment Napoleon Bonaparte steps onto the floor, the carefully laid plans unravel like cheap cloth. He enters not to cheers, but to a chorus of indignant shouts. "Down with the tyrant!" they roar. "Outlaw him!" Deputies surge forward, a sea of furious faces. You see him, the man who conquered Italy, who faced the Mamluks, falter. The hero of Arcola is jostled, grabbed, threatened by clerks and legislators. His carefully composed military bearing crumbles. He grows pale, stumbles, perhaps genuinely overwhelmed by this raw civilian fury. He is not on a battlefield, ordering charges, but trapped in a political ambush he utterly failed to anticipate. The myth of the invincible commander takes a sudden, humanizing blow. He is vulnerable, awkward, nearly fainting under the pressure. This isn't grand strategy playing out. This is a desperate, improvised street fight for power. And Napoleon, the supposed mastermind, is losing the immediate skirmish. Just as the moment teeters on the edge of collapse, potentially consigning him to the guillotine or exile, a hand reaches out. It is his brother, Lucien Bonaparte, president of the council, a skilled orator where Napoleon is not. Lucien, seeing his brother's distress and the coup's imminent failure, acts decisively. He rushes outside, appeals dramatically to the soldiers gathered there, troops loyal to Napoleon, thanks to years of campaigns and careful cultivation. He fabricates a story of assassins threatening the council, a lie designed to justify military intervention. The gamble works. The troops, led by loyal generals like Murat, storm the hall. They clear the chamber at bayonet point, driving out the stunned deputies. The scene is undignified, messy, utterly lacking the grandeur Napoleon might have envisioned for his ascent. It is a clumsy, almost farcical takeover, reliant less on brilliant planning and more on timing, brute force, and the quick-witted deception of an ally. Yet, out of this chaotic scramble, the Directory is overthrown. A new government is formed, and Napoleon, despite his personal stumble, emerges as first consul of France, holding the reins of power tighter than any man since the king. The path to absolute power is rarely the clean, majestic procession often depicted in later portraits. It is frequently a tangle of opportune moments, brutal practicality, and relying on others to bail you out when your own composure cracks. This wasn't a coronation, it was a wrestling match that ended with troops clearing the ring. It asks us to reflect. How much of the success we admire as planned genius is simply seizing a moment, even awkwardly, with allies ready to back your play when you stumble? What would you have done, standing there, watching your planned ascent dissolve into a humiliating scuffle? You step from the chaotic dust of Brumaire into the polished halls of power. The uniform fades slightly. You see him now not just as the victorious general, but as first consul. France is a patient weary unto death, bled dry by revolution and uncertainty. Napoleon offers not ideals, but order. He applies the same relentless energy that conquered battlefields to the messy business of governing. It is a whirlwind, power drawn inward, centralized in Paris like iron filings to a magnet. Administration is streamlined, made brutally efficient. The shattered economy begins to mend, anchored by the creation of the Bank of France. He sits across from the Pope, negotiating the Concordat, a pragmatic reconciliation with the Church he once seemed to scorn. A shrewd political chess move to appease a deeply Catholic populace. Then comes the Civil Code, a monument more enduring than any victory arch. He immerses himself in its creation, debating legal points with scholars, shaping a legal framework that will influence nations for centuries. This is the legislator, the architect of a modern state, a surprising detail for those who only saw the cannon smoke. He provides clarity, structure, a predictable path forward for a nation craving stability above all else. But this order is forged with an iron hand. The vibrant, often chaotic, liberty of the revolution is systematically curtailed. The press is muzzled, newspapers drastically reduced and strictly censored. Dissent, once celebrated in the streets, is now ruthlessly suppressed. A pervasive police state begins to take shape, watching, listening. Simultaneously, a deliberate, state-sponsored personality cult looms, elevating the first consul to near-mythical status. Stability is the currency, and liberty is the steep price paid for it. You witness the stark reality. Effective leadership can indeed deliver progress and security with breathtaking speed. But often, perhaps always, it demands a consolidation of power that inevitably shrinks the space for individual freedoms. The former revolutionary general becomes the ultimate centralizer, an undeniable, almost tragic irony woven into the very fabric of his rule. Ask yourself, what balance do you strike between order and autonomy in your own sphere of influence? When is control necessary to achieve stability or progress? And when does it become detrimental, suffocating? Consider the trade-offs you make, big or small, between structure and freedom. The air in the room hangs thick with centuries of incense and political maneuvering. You are here, in 1801, a silent observer as Napoleon Bonaparte, first consul of France, faces the emissaries of Pope Pius VII. This is no theological debate. It is a negotiation of raw power and cynical utility. Watch him. See the sharp, assessing gaze, the impatience barely masked. He is not a man of fervent faith. The revolution he rode to power had stripped churches, exiled priests, even installed a goddess of reason. A decade of revolutionary zealotry had fractured France, pitting neighbor against neighbor, fueling rebellion in the countryside, where the old faith held deepest root. Napoleon knows this better than anyone. He sees the church not as a spiritual guide, but as a vast, pre-existing network of influence, a bedrock of authority, older than any republic or empire he might build. He needs to pacify the Vendée, to soothe the anxieties of millions who mourn their shattered rights. The Concordat he is forging here is a masterpiece of pragmatic calculation. He will restore Catholicism as the religion of the majority of French citizens. A carefully worded phrase, not the state religion. In return, the Pope acknowledges the legitimacy of the French Republic and the loss of church lands seized during the Revolution. But the devil, as ever, is in the details. The state will nominate bishops. The state will pay clergy salaries, effectively making them civil servants, swearing oaths to the government. The Pope can consecrate the bishops, yes, but Napoleon holds the key nominations. It's not a return to the old order. It's the church placed firmly under the state's thumb, a captured institution now serving the regime's stability. Observe the sheer audacity. Napoleon is leveraging the deep-seated faith of his people, a force he doesn't personally share, to cement his own secular power. He's using the ultimate symbol of tradition to legitimize his radical break from the past. It's the cold, strategic mind at work, seeing religion not as a path to salvation, but as a tool for political control, a potent antidote to rural unrest, and a potential source of legitimization on the international stage. It is perhaps the ultimate cynical insight into how power truly operates. It doesn't just build new structures. It repurposes old, trusted ones, even sacred ones, for its own ends. This reveals his profound understanding of human nature. That belief, whether spiritual or cultural, is a powerful force that can be directed. He takes the ancient, tangled roots of faith and grafts his new regime onto them, drawing strength from their established hold on the populace. There is a certain chilling brilliance in this. A leader so devoid of personal religious conviction, yet so acutely aware of its societal power, that he would sit down with the Pope's men and bargain for the soul of the nation, not out of piety, but out of necessity and ambition. Ask yourself, what established systems, beliefs, or traditions do you find yourself navigating or leveraging in your own pursuits? Even if you don't personally adhere to them. Napoleon saw faith as just another lever to pull in the intricate clockwork of power. It is March 1804. A chill hangs in the air, not just from the season, but from a growing tension in the halls of power. Whispers of plots against you, Napoleon, fill the air like a creeping fog. Across the border, in Baden, lives a young man, the Duc d'Enghien, a prince of the old Bourbon bloodline, living in neutral territory. You perceive him not just as a symbol, but as a potential rallying point for those who dream of restoring the monarchy. Falsely implicated in a conspiracy that likely never truly threatened your life, he becomes a target. The decision is swift, brutal, and chillingly pragmatic in its intent. Eliminate the threat. On your direct orders, a detachment crosses the border under the cover of darkness. Neutrality is violated, international law disregarded. The prince is seized, a pawn snatched from a chessboard, and rushed back to France. There is no due process, no real investigation. A military commission is hastily assembled. The trial is a mockery, a predetermined act designed to give a veneer of legality to political assassination. Charges are flimsy, evidence non-existent, but the verdict is sealed before a single word is spoken. Within 24 hours of his kidnapping, under the cold gaze of dawn, the Duc d'Enghien stands in the moat of the Château de Vincennes. A firing squad waits. This isn't justice, it's a public execution. The message is unmistakable, delivered with brutal clarity. Anyone associated with the old order, anyone perceived as a threat, is fair game. You will tolerate no challenge, real or imagined. The act sends shockwaves across Europe, earning widespread condemnation. Even some within your own circle are appalled, whispering that this was not just a crime, but a blunder worse than a crime, cementing the image of a ruthless tyrant. The deeper insight here is stark. Power, especially when absolute or feeling insecure, can morph into paranoia. It can lead you down a path where preemptive elimination seems like the safest option, where the lines between justice and ruthless expediency blur into oblivion. You chose terror over due process, the immediate removal of a perceived obstacle over confronting opposition within the bounds of law or morality. It was a demonstration of unchecked authority, yes, but also a confession of vulnerability, a fear that lingering threats could undermine everything you had built. Ask yourself, as your own power or influence inevitably grows, how vigilant must you become against the insidious creep of paranoia? How do you distinguish genuine threats from perceived ones, and resist the terrifying temptation to eliminate opposition rather than face it openly within the light of principle? The Motte de Vincennes remains a dark monument to the cost of power untethered from constraint. The air crackles with fear and whispers. Plots seem to sprout like weeds in the wake of the Duke of Enghien's execution, a stark, chilling message sent across Europe. The ground feels unstable underfoot. Royalist hopes, though dampened, are not extinguished. They still dream of a Bourbon on the throne, of turning back the clock. You, Napoleon, have consolidated immense power, but it hangs perilously on your single life. What happens if a plot succeeds? Chaos? A return to the past? From the political shadows, an idea begins to coalesce among your most trusted and perhaps most ambitious allies. It's floated gently at first, then with growing urgency. Consolidate power, yes, but make it permanent, make it hereditary. Remove all hope of a restoration, not just for today, but for generations to come. Create an empire. They argue it's necessary for stability, the logical endpoint of securing the revolution's gains against internal and external threats. It's presented as a shield for France, a guarantee against future upheaval. You listen. Perhaps you feign hesitation, a show of republican modesty for the history books. But inwardly, the concept resonates. It's the logical, perhaps inevitable, next step. You already wield the authority of kings, surpassing that of many historical monarchs. Why remain merely consul for life, an office tied to your mortality, when you can forge an imperial dynasty, a legacy cast in granite? You embrace the concept with astonishing speed. The transformation is swift, almost breathtaking in its audacity. The first consul for life sets his sights on a throne. This isn't merely an upgrade in title. It's a fundamental shift in the nature of your ambition. You didn't fight your way to the top merely to hold an office, however elevated. You fought to possess power, and now to make that possession absolute and enduring. The revolutionary general who swore to defend the republic against kings is preparing to crown himself emperor. There's a subtle, bitter irony there, a twist of the knife in the heart of the very ideals that first propelled you. This transition lays bare a profound, perhaps universal truth about ambition. Power, once tasted, rarely satisfies itself with mere possession. It creates an almost insatiable hunger for permanence, for control that transcends personal achievement and seeks to embed itself within the fabric of time through hereditary succession. Your astonishing personal journey begins to transform into a dynastic project. You aren't just building a nation. You are attempting to build a royal house from the ashes of the one you overthrew. The crown becomes not just a symbol of authority, but of genetic claim, a claim you are inventing out of sheer force of will. You are standing at the precipice of declaring yourself the heir to Charlemagne, a staggering leap from the artillery garrisons of provincial France. It is an act of immense self-belief, perhaps bordering on delusion, but presented to the world as cold, hard necessity for the stability of the state. This moment forces a difficult reflection. Do your own goals, your ambitions, have a natural, defined endpoint? Or does achieving one level of success simply reveal the desire for the next, more absolute level of control? Does the consolidation of power inevitably lead to the craving for permanence and hereditary right? Watch now as the consul reaches for the imperial crown, not just for himself, but for a future he intends to command from beyond the grave. Months melt into a frenzy within the opulent ancient heart of Paris. You walk the cobblestones, vibrant with the noise of a city consumed by a single colossal purpose, crowning the emperor. This isn't just a ceremony. It's a meticulously orchestrated drama playing out on the grandest possible stage, a performance of power designed to silence doubt and forge a new epoch in the global imagination. Across the city, workshops hum. Tailors stitch imperial robes heavy with gold thread and ermine. Jewelers polish diamonds destined for a new crown. The Grand Master of Ceremonies, a former playwright perhaps, meticulously plans the routes, the timings, the very choreography of the day. Carriages are not merely built, they are gilded, transformed into mobile thrones, destined to carry the central figures through streets lined with an expectant, carefully managed populace. Security isn't an afterthought. It's a labyrinth of planning, ensuring no dissenting voice mars the harmonious spectacle. Every detail is a brushstroke on a canvas of absolute control. At the heart of this visual narrative is Jacques-Louis David, the Revolution's celebrated artist, now the emperor's chosen chronicler. He isn't just painting a picture, he is capturing the official memory. His immense canvas, destined for the Louvre, will show not just the act of coronation, but Napoleon placing the crown upon his own head, a deliberate subversion of papal authority, a bold visual declaration of self-made power. Its propaganda elevated to high art, ensuring that centuries from now, people will see the story Napoleon wanted them to see. The commission itself is a statement. History will be recorded, and he will dictate the terms. This isn't just about legality or divine right. Those are abstract concepts. This is about creating a palpable, overwhelming sense of legitimacy. You see it in the sheer scale of the undertaking. The thousands involved, the millions spent, the disruption to ordinary life. It all screams importance, permanence, inevitability. It's a psychological operation as much as a political one. By making the coronation a spectacle of unprecedented grandeur, Napoleon isn't just receiving power, he is performing his right to it, daring anyone to question the reality he is so forcefully creating. Consider the sheer theatricality of it. The revolution had rejected kings, guillotined monarchs, preached austerity and republican virtue. Now Paris is preparing a show that would make Versailles blush. It's a dazzling, perhaps even cynical, acknowledgement that while force can seize power, lasting authority often requires the illusion of something more. Tradition reborn, destiny fulfilled, a divine mandate reimagined by human hands. It's the ultimate bait and switch. Reject the old monarchy, but embrace a new one, wrapped in revolutionary glory, but presenting itself with royal pomp. The deeper insight here is profound. Consolidation of power is never just about decrees or armies. It's about controlling the narrative, shaping perception, constructing symbols that resonate deeper than laws. The imperial eagle, the coronation robes, the elaborate procession, these aren't just decorations. They are vital components of the new regime's foundation. They tell a story of destiny, strength, and a new, undeniable order. It's a manufactured reality presented with such overwhelming force that it begins to feel inevitable, even natural. Think about the parallel in your own world. How much of the authority you perceive in leaders, in institutions, even in individuals, is based on authentic strength, competence, or right, and how much is a carefully constructed, brilliantly executed performance? Look at the polished image, the staged photo opportunities, the scripted speeches designed to project an invulnerable front. It's a lesson old as time, played out with dazzling clarity on the streets of 1804 Paris. Napoleon understood that the battle for legitimacy is often fought not on the field, but in the minds and hearts of the people, one with spectacle and controlled narrative. It's a sobering thought. The throne wasn't just taken, it was built, piece by painstaking, glittering, propagandistic piece. You stand within the cavernous heart of Notre Dame Cathedral, but it feels less like a sanctuary and more like a stage set for a grand, audacious play. The ancient Gothic stone is draped and transformed by swathes of neoclassical decor, fabric hangings, Roman-inspired columns, gilded eagles. It's a deliberate, almost jarring fusion, a visual manifesto of ambition. You breathe in the scent of incense, mingling strangely with the newness of recent paint and polished brass. Around you, the air hums with a tension thick enough to cut. This is December 2nd, 1804, Coronation Day. The assembled guests are a who's who of France and beyond. Marshals in glittering uniforms, senators in togas echoing Rome, the diplomatic corps, the elite of the new regime, and the uneasy remnants of the old order. Every glance, every whisper is part of the performance. At the center of it all, or rather positioned as a crucial, unwilling prop, sits Pope Pius VII. His expression is a study in forced composure, a man of ancient, divine authority brought here across the Alps to lend a veneer of sacred legitimacy to a man of gunpowder and revolution. He represents the thousands-year legacy of the Church, now reduced, for this moment, to a necessary character in Napoleon's script. The entire scene is an exquisite, calculated display. Napoleon, the Corsican outsider who seized power through military genius and political maneuvering, understands that raw power, while potent, can be fragile. True, lasting authority, he believes, requires ritual, symbol, and the reluctant nod of established institutions. He needs the Church, which still holds sway over the hearts of the French populace, to bless his rise, to transform the general/consul into emperor. But he will not kneel unconditionally. The choreography is meticulously planned. The procession, the oaths, the presence of the Pope, it's all designed to bridge the gap between the revolutionary upheaval that brought him to power and the historical grandeur of monarchical rule he now seeks to embody. And then comes the pivotal moment, the act that defines the entire spectacle and reveals the core truth of Napoleon's relationship with power and tradition. As the Pope prepares to crown him, Napoleon reaches out, takes the heavy diadem from Pius VII's hands, and places it upon his own head. Then he crowns his kneeling wife, Josephine. It is a breathtaking gesture of self-coronation. It says unequivocally, "Your blessing is used, but my power originates from myself, sanctioned by the will of the nation, not the Church." This isn't merely ceremony. It is a carefully staged assertion of ultimate secular authority, leveraging the presence of the sacred only to publicly supersede it. It is a masterclass in using old structures as tools, not masters to be served. The deeper insight here is the strategic coldness with which Napoleon treats these ancient symbols. The Church, the Pope, the traditions of coronations, they are elements on his chessboard. He doesn't dismantle them. He integrates them into his narrative, bending their meaning to serve his ascent. He forces the head of Catholicism to travel hundreds of miles to witness his self-elevation, a subtle humiliation masked by pomp. It's a surprising detail for many. The Pope's vital but subservient role, Napoleon's hand seizing the crown. It wasn't an impulsive act. It was the planned climax of his dramatic theater. This moment poses a sharp reflection for you. How do you navigate the established systems or hierarchies you encounter in your work, your community, your aspirations? Do you diligently work within their confines, respecting their inherent authority? Or are you always watching, waiting for the moment, the calculated opportunity to assert your own ultimate authority, using those structures as a platform rather than a cage? Consider Napoleon in Notre Dame, seemingly working within tradition, yet fundamentally redefining it through a single, defiant act. Was this brilliance in political theater, recognizing that the age of divine right was over, replaced by the age of self-made man? Or was it pure, unadulterated hubris, setting himself above even the perceived representative of God on earth? The consequence was clear. He was emperor, yes, but the tension between his modern power and the old world's legitimacy would never truly resolve. The air in Notre Dame Cathedral is thick with incense and the hushed awe of thousands. You are there, a silent observer among the dignitaries and soldiers on that freezing December morning in 1804. The grandeur is overwhelming. Velvet drapes, golden eagles, the immense weight of history pressing down. At the altar stands Pope Pius VII, brought from Rome, a symbol of divine authority that has legitimized European rulers for centuries. This moment is meant to fuse the raw power of the revolution with the ancient sanction of the Church. The ritual unfolds. The Pope blesses the regalia, the symbols of imperial might. According to every shred of tradition, every historical precedent that stretches back to Charlemagne, the pontiff should now take the heavy, ornate crown and place it upon the head of the new emperor, Napoleon Bonaparte. This act signifies God's blessing, the Church's recognition, the old world's acceptance. But Napoleon has not come this far, orchestrated this entire spectacle. To bow to tradition or the implicit authority of another, not even the vicar of Christ on earth, he stands before the altar, his gaze fixed, unwavering. Then, with a movement so deliberate, so charged with intent that it seems to electrify the vast echoing space, he reaches out, not towards the Pope, but towards the crown itself. It's a heavy thing, crafted in the style of a Roman emperor's laurel wreath, weighing over 18 pounds, a stark contrast to the intricate crowns of the Bourbons he replaced. He lifts it, the gold gleaming under the cathedral lights, holds it aloft for a brief, potent second, and then, with undeniable force of will, places it firmly upon his own head. The collective breath of the assembly catches. A subtle, almost imperceptible ripple of shock passes through the crowd. The Pope sits frozen, his planned role usurped by a single audacious gesture. This was not merely a detail changed. It was a revolution in symbolism. He had invited the Pope to Paris not to be crowned by him, but to crown himself in front of him. It is a breathtaking, unapologetic assertion of self-made authority. He then turns and proceeds to crown his empress, Josephine. This single act speaks volumes. It is the visual manifesto of his core belief system, the distillation of his entire journey from obscure Corsican artillery officer to emperor of the French. His power, he declared through this silence-shattering action, came not from God, nor from inherited birthright, nor even solely from the abstract will of the people, though he would constantly invoke it. No, his authority originated here, in his own hands, forged by his own relentless ambition, his own strategic brilliance, his own unyielding will. He was his own architect, his own divine right, his own source of legitimacy. Consider this pivotal moment, this rejection of millennia of tradition. It begs a profound question, not just about Napoleon, but about yourself. In a world where validation is often sought externally, where status is measured by lineage, wealth, or the approval of others, where do you believe the bedrock of your own authority, your strength, your capacity to act and lead originates? Is it bestowed upon you by others, inherited from your circumstances, or, like Napoleon's laurel wreath, placed upon your head solely by the force of your own conviction and action? It's a question that separates those who are given power from those who take it. The heavy, gold-laden crown settles upon your head. You feel its weight, not just of metal and jewels, but of history being made, of defiance hurled against the old order. You have taken it, not received it from a prelate. Declaring sovereignty springs from the people, represented by you. The cheers and murmurs of the vast Notre Dame Cathedral swell around you, a thunderous validation of audacity. But the moment isn't complete. Power craves permanence. A reign isn't truly secure until it gestures towards succession, towards a future beyond the current ruler. And so you turn. Your gaze finds Josephine. Clad in an equally magnificent gown, she is positioned not on a throne like you, but steps away, a carefully orchestrated visual cue. As you approach, she sinks gracefully to her knees on a velvet cushion before the altar. The room holds its breath. This is it, the elevation of the woman who shared the journey, the public embrace of a lineage you intend to build. You hold a smaller, yet still resplendent diadem. As you reach forward to place it on her head, proclaiming her empress, the intention is clear, bold, and undeniably political. This isn't merely an act of spousal affection in the midst of supreme power. It is a calculated move to establish a dynasty. By crowning Josephine, you are not just elevating your wife, you are designating the potential, the hope of a line of succession that will anchor your reign in time, stretching its influence beyond your own heartbeat. You are attempting to build a future, a new bloodline to rival the Bourbons you replaced. The message is broadcast to France, to Europe, to history. The Bonaparte era is not merely a temporary regime change, but the birth of a new imperial house. Yet, even in this moment of shared glory, the ultimate truth hangs heavy in the air. Though she is now empress, though the public declaration speaks of a shared imperial destiny, everyone present understands who holds the scepter, who wears the weightiest crown, whose will is paramount. The power flows from you, through you. Josephine is elevated by your hand, her position dependent on your authority. It is a carefully constructed performance of partnership, masking the singular source of power. Here lies a profound insight into the nature of supreme ambition. It rarely contents itself with individual achievement. The drive for power extends beyond one's own lifespan, yearning to project influence into the future, to create a lasting legacy often cemented through family, through the elevation of those within one's immediate orbit. You bring them close, give them titles, share the stage, or at least appear to, all in service of solidifying your position and ensuring the endurance of your creation. But what happens when the chosen vessel for this dynastic ambition cannot fulfill that goal? There's a quiet irony here, a seed of future conflict planted even as the crown is placed. Ask yourself, what are you building that you hope will last beyond you? Is the focus solely on your personal legacy, etched onto the world by your own actions? Or is it about cultivating something larger, something that requires others to carry it forward? And look around you. Who are you bringing into your orbit of power, sharing the stage with? Are they partners in a true sense, or extensions of your own will, elevated to serve a grander design that originates and terminates with you? The answers reveal much about the true nature of the empires we seek to build, big or small. The heavy velvet of the coronation robe settles, the ermine brushing your skin as you stand, the weight on your head less a physical burden than a symbolic one. You took the crown from the Pope's hands, placed it upon your own head, then crowned Josephine. A singular moment of self-creation, a defiant flourish against centuries of inherited right. You are Napoleon I, Emperor of the French. The crowd roars, the cannons boom, but a chilling silence echoes in the chanceries of Europe. You ascended to the highest rank you could conceive, achieving a title that rivals Charlemagne. On paper, your authority is absolute, vested in the very concept of empire. You hold the scepter, the orb, the keys to immense power. But what did the crown truly grant you? Not peace, not security, not universal acclaim. Instead, you instantly become the ultimate target. The very act of self-coronation, a revolutionary upstart, mocking the ancient lineage of divine right monarchs, sends shivers of fear and outrage through every other crowned head. You are no longer merely first consul, a powerful general leading a revolutionary republic. You are now emperor, mimicking the grandest titles of Europe, yet simultaneously representing the force that overthrew their counterparts. This isn't a transition. It's a declaration of war against the old order, using their own symbols against them. The cost is immediate, palpable. Across the continent, fear congeals into resolve. The disparate resentments and lingering hostilities coalesce into a unified force. Great Britain, Austria, Russia, Sweden, Naples. They see your ascent not as legitimate rule, but as an existential threat. The ink is barely dry on the coronation decrees before the framework for the Third Coalition solidifies against you. They declare you an outlaw, a usurper, a figure whose very existence at this pinnacle of power is intolerable. The ultimate prize, the glittering symbol of supreme authority you placed upon your own head, immediately brings ultimate opposition. This is the profound paradox of reaching the peak. It often just exposes you to stronger, colder winds. You climbed the mountain, planting your flag at the summit, only to find you are now visible from every distant valley. And everyone is aiming upwards. The struggle didn't end with the coronation. It merely entered a new, infinitely more dangerous phase, initiated not by your enemies, but by this very act of ultimate self-assertion. You sought stability through elevation, yet you sowed the seeds of unprecedented conflict. Attaining the highest title didn't resolve the fight for power. It merely changed its nature and scale, inviting challenges from opponents who now fight with the conviction that the very future of their monarchical world is at stake. Its tragic irony etched into the pages of history. The moment you grasp absolute power, you simultaneously expose yourself to absolute vulnerability. You sit on a throne made of ambition, but its foundations are built on shifting sands of fear and envy. Ask yourself, watching him don that crown, was the goal itself the reward, or was it the journey and the continuous struggle that defined him until this point? And what new, insurmountable problems do you invariably create for yourself when you finally reach the top, proving everyone else right to fear your ascent? The crown weighs heavily, not just with gold and jewels, but with the immediate, crushing burden of universal enmity. You step back from the scene in Notre Dame, leaving the echoes of trumpets and manufactured cheers to fade. The self-coronation of Napoleon Bonaparte was more than just a historical event. It was a potent, unforgettable symbol. It represented the audacious, almost terrifying belief that authority wasn't something granted by God, inherited through blood, or even bestowed by the people. It could be created by sheer will, by ambition crowning itself, convinced its own force was sufficient to reshape the world. You have traced the path that led inexorably to that moment, from the lonely, driven boy on a provincial island to the ruthless strategist, the charismatic leader who could inspire legions, the pragmatic politician who built institutions, and finally, the self-proclaimed emperor, answering only to himself. What timeless lesson does this dramatic turning point offer us centuries later? Perhaps it is this, that unchecked ambition, while undeniably capable of astonishing creation, breathtaking achievement, and seismic change, carries the seeds of its own destruction buried deep within its very assertion of absolute self-reliance. By placing the crown on his own head, Napoleon simultaneously declared his ultimate independence from all external authority, tradition, monarchy, even the church whose representatives stood by, and tragically, isolated himself from the very forces, shared power, external validation, checks and balances that might have provided stability or restraint. The pursuit of ultimate, self-made power became a circular trap, requiring ever more power to defend the power already seized. He built his throne on the volatile ground of his own will, and such ground is prone to seismic shifts. Consider your own life, your own ambitions, large or small. Are you building on solid ground, collaborating, acknowledging external realities and wisdom? Or are you perhaps unconsciously constructing a reality that relies solely on the strength of your own will, your own convictions? What happens, the history asks, when the will falters, as all human will eventually does, or when external forces inevitably challenge your self-made throne? What if history, in its relentless, cyclical nature, offers us new Napoleons, driven by the same desires, convinced they can simply take the crown, accountable to no one but themselves? Napoleon, reflecting in the silence of exile, stripped of the power he so desperately craved, perhaps began to grasp the bitter irony of his ascent. He who had controlled so much, moved armies and redrawn maps, ended up controlled by his past actions, confined by the immutable consequences of his boundless will. His own words, though often colored by self-pity or justification, sometimes touched on this profound truth. As he famously said, reflecting on his fall from grace, "Power is my mistress. I have worked too hard at her conquest to allow anyone to take her from me." But, in the end, it wasn't another general or a coalition of kings that truly defeated him. It was the conquest itself, the absolute, self-crowned power that proved too heavy a burden for any single man to bear indefinitely. It led not to eternal empire, but to the profound, isolated silence of exile. And the crushing weight of that self-placed crown is a lesson history still bears, a whisper carried on the wind from St. Helena, urging us to understand the true cost of ambition unbound.